This is a brand new building, right?
Yes, absolutely brand new. Well, brand new as of last year.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you've been open in this spot just about a year now?
Year and a half.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, that's really amazing.
Yeah, time flies. We were in Mount Horeb, and we probably would have stayed in Mount Horeb, but we were on a 5-year commercial lease, and it looked like there were going to be options to renew, but the landlord at the time decided that he didn't want to renew because he wanted the building for his own purposes. He owned the building, so we needed to find a new home. And I looked around for over a year in Mount Horeb trying to get things to happen, and most regrettably, I was thwarted at every turn. We kind of built our brand in Mount Horeb, and I had a preference for staying there. But by the time we got to the very end of the process, we had put together a plan and presented it to the city or the village, and they somehow couldn't respond to it or whatever. And so that was it. We were out of daylight, and I had to move. So this area over here in Verona was one of my other alternate locations, and here we are. Considerably bigger. Yep. I mean, we were in a very small location in Mount Horeb, storefront right in town. The tasting room was a third the size of what this is. And, we were kind of plateauing on sales there. And the biggest reason, I believe, is because the size of the room, we could only hold so many people, so there were events and other things going on that we couldn't take advantage of. So we kind of needed the elbow room. This is much different. We can handle 150 people here at full capacity if we needed to. And we've certainly had plenty of events and activities going on here with 80 people or 50 people, so we have a lot of different things going on. And the other thing is we have a really nice outdoor wine patio now. People really want to sit out if they can and, sip their wine and nibble their cheese and socialize or listen to music. The design in this building was very nice, and it seemed to fit well for a winery's needs. We have a 5K race coming up in September, and the Fisher King, what do we call it? The running of the wines. And so yeah, we've gotten permission from the developer, and the city is fine with that we're going to cordon off part of the front parking lot, and that'll be the staging area for the race. People will be able to actually, as long as they're within the confines of that roped off, taped off area, they can also drink out there as well, have sips of wine and enjoy themselves outdoors that day, assuming it's a nice day to be hanging around outside.
Oh, it will be, I'm sure.
Okay, all right. All of 2017 was a big transition year for us. We didn't get everything fully up and running until partway into the year. So those sales were, roughly the same as what they were the year before in Mount Horeb. This year we're starting to pull ahead. I think what we're doing is we're still in sort of a rebuilding. Sure. Because the dynamic here is quite a bit different. I mean, the one advantage we had in Mount Horeb, albeit a very small space and in some ways limiting, we had a lot more walk-in traffic because wineries, as you know, are destination businesses. People do seek us out, but we had that going for us. But in addition to that, because we were on a walkable downtown, we did have other business that came in where we were part of the reason they came to the winery in town or came to town, but maybe it wasn't the main reason. So there was a mix of all of that. And so we're kind of rebuilding that. So we're trying to make up for some of that, not walk-in traffic by hosting more private and public events. And so it's working. It's getting there, but it's been a little bit of a learning curve. It's almost like starting over a little bit. We opened our doors in the tasting room in Mount Horeb in 2011. So in fact, this September coming up, it'll be our 7-year anniversary. So, and again, you say time flies. It's amazing how quickly that.
Oh yeah.
How that went. So right now, between 60 and 70% of our production is made from grapes grown right around here locally, like in southern Wisconsin. Some of the vineyards are quite close, others are a little further away, but it's all Wisconsin. That's way back in 2007 and 2008, I was on the founding board of the Wisconsin Grape Growers Association. So the only reason I'm mentioning that is because it's been a long time since I've been on that board or done a lot of things with those guys. But There will always be a soft spot in my heart, always, for making sure that we have good representation of locally grown cold hardy hybrid grapes in our wine lineup. So I have contracts out with about a dozen growers around the state, and harvest is coming up, and so we'll be bringing those grapes in really soon now. It's looking like the harvest is going to be a little early this year. The metrics seem to put it a little ahead. But we also bring grapes and juice in from out of state. But we're pretty selective about that. And whenever I can, I always try to get grapes instead of juice if it's feasible, because of that added degree of separation, where if you get juice in, you didn't get the chance to look at the grapes before they went into the crusher and the press. And that can be incredibly revealing. And in the past, I have rejected grapes, local grapes, because when they showed up, they were just moldy and horrible. And, you would probably pick up on some of that in the juice, but not without that seeing that first step, it might not be quite as clear. And you might not pick up on how bad or severe something might be. So it's always better to try to use fresh fruit and grapes right off the bat when you can. But I have some confidence with several of the sources where we're getting certain juices from. As long as you have confidence with them, that's what you need. You just need to make sure that you have good experience with them and you have a high degree of believability in them, and then you're probably okay. So I have my own small vineyard, but as you know, I'm sure, Ray, it takes a huge amount of grapes to make just a little tiny bit of wine. So, I mean, even if you go to a winery where there's acres of vines around the winery, that's still kind of a drop in the bucket compared to a person's production. So that's as much eye candy and the claim to say estate grapes as it is, the practicality of contributing to your wine volume that year. So those guys, unless they have a huge tract of land, are pretty much buying grapes or juice as well. It's a very, very complicated business. It's a very, very challenging business. As you alluded to earlier, there's retail, there's marketing aspects to it, there's distribution, there's basically like a light manufacturing, it's food processing. You're doing many, many different things, and because of the overhead and the costs involved, I have, right now, I think currently somewhere in the vicinity of over $100,000 in wine inventory in one form or another, either as bulk wine or in bottles up here in the tasting room and in the back. Every season, the winery has to outlay a slug of money to get the fresh fruit. If you're dependent on the fall harvest and you're not just buying juice from, say, California in smaller amounts throughout the year on the bulk juice or bulk wine market, cash flow is tough for wineries. The overhead is tough. It takes a while for a winery to become profitable, primarily because of those things. I don't know if the listeners find this part particularly interesting, because it's not directly related to them, but it's the retail room is very important for the winery, because that's the only way, by making our sales out the front, that's how we're able to stay in business, to fund that, because basically what we're doing is funding our growth with today's dollars. So you spend tens of thousands of dollars in a 2-month window in the fall, in addition to all your regular operating expenses and everything. People should feel very motivated or happy, hopefully willing to visit local wineries, because the survival of those wineries and the ability for that winery to flourish is so dependent on customers coming in and spending time and spending a little bit of money in the winery's retail stores.